Hi, I'm Kathryn.
And I'm Theresa.
And we are the co-authors of the book, Pass the Baton, Empowering All Music Students.
Our goal is to share stories of educators who are passing the baton and empowering their music students. We want to help teachers create music lessons that transform students from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. We're here to talk about all things student empowerment and music education. Before we introduce today's guest, we want to remind you to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes.
In addition, if you like what you hear today, please consider leaving a rating or review. That's what helps podcasts like Pass the Baton grow.
Okay, so a couple things are a little bit different today, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Instead of having a guest join us, we're actually going to be just talking, Kathryn and I, and I'm going to be interviewing Kathryn.
Yes, and as you can see, if you're on the YouTube video, we're together in the same room.
Yay! How much fun is that?
Yeah.
I was at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago, which was an awesome conference, but then ended up with some canceled flights. So luckily, Kathryn and I were able to get together and figured what a perfect opportunity to record this.
Yeah.
All right. So today, as I said, we're going to be talking to Kathryn about some empathy projects that she's done in her classroom. But before we go there, Kathryn, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Tell us about your background and your teaching role.
Yeah. So I currently teach K-5 general music. I'm in Northbrook, Illinois, which is a northern suburb. Been teaching general music for about 25 years. It's my thing. I am also, as you know, an author, a co-author of Pass the Baton book, but also a book about STEAM and a book about incorporating music lessons in literature, children's literature.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And so, but I think today we might talk a little STEAM-ish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's see where to start here. I know we've talked about some of these things, but not all of them. So really, we're getting into some work with adaptive instruments. So I guess why don't you tell us, first of all, how did you get interested in adaptive instruments? How did you start making them? And then, where did this go as far as incorporating your students?
Yeah, I think one thing too I should start with is that I work with Abigail Blair, and we together we've made ourselves the Blair Finch Project. And so I wrote those two books, a STEAM book and the music literature book with Abby. And Abby's the one that kind of got me into STEAM. I think she was trying some things in her classroom, and I was like, I need you to hold my hand. I need you to help me through a makey. What is this? And so then, but what's kind of been nice is that I think that's what's nice when you find somebody like you and I have found each other. Like there's somebody who can kind of pull you along with the things that they're good at. And then I think Abby would say the same as then once she got me through like what a makey is and some of those things, I'm pulling her through the coding stuff. So Abby was the one that kind of helped me kind of dive into STEAM a little bit more and some of the tech that goes along with, that can go along with STEAM. But then I went to a state conference, Illinois State Conference, and somebody else we were, I guess, talking about using makey, which if people don't know what a makey is, it's kind of like a circuit board. It looks kind of like a Nintendo Play, what am I trying to say? Like the controller. Yeah. But you can hook that up to a computer with some cords and hook it up to a simple online coding website like Scratch that a lot of kids nowadays really know well. Yeah. And you can, make sounds. You're making a circuit, right? So you can make lots of things with it. And so somebody was talking about at the state conference how they use their makey and they made an adaptive recorder or an adaptive instrument. Maybe it was a recorder, I'm not sure. But that was like when my mind just kind of blew up a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, like I spend so much time at my school trying to find an adaptive instrument for certain students in my population. And you spend so much money. And when you get the instrument, it might not even be compatible with your students. So it's just, there's so many possible missed opportunities with these expensive instruments. And this woman blew my mind. I was like, oh yeah, we could make these things too.
Yeah.
So I went home and tried. This is after Abby had helped me like hook up a makey and things. But then I basically coded very simple sounds into Scratch recorder sounds, and then created the circuit and hooked everything up with my makey in my laptop. And before I knew it, I had like a Play-Doh as buttons, but like an adaptive recorder.
Yeah.
That a child who, using a traditional recorder, that wasn't going to be a thing. So, and then it started to really open up this idea of like, oh, with just a few little things, sometimes tech related or sometimes not, I can make some adaptive instruments for the needs of my students. And not be spending all this money on these really, really expensive other options.
Cool. So like paint the picture. What does it look like with that very, very first one you made? So you said the computer, makey, Play-Doh. What?
Yes.
Describe it to us.
And I also met up with one of the teachers in that we have a foundations classroom.
Okay.
So so these students that have some pretty big challenges, and like, anyways, this teacher was helping me kind of refine my instrument, right? So with her help, we had the laptop, and you hook a USB or you hook a cord into the makey into the laptop.
Okay.
Then you've got your circuit board, your little makey.
Okay.
And then you've got these alligator clips that then can turn into buttons.
Okay.
So I clipped those, and then I put like different colored Play-Dohs for like B, A, and G.
Okay.
Then when I'm on the laptop, I went to scratch.mit.edu, and that's where I like made very simple coding for like a B. So when you hit space on the keyboard, you'll get a B recorder sound.
Okay.
And I recorded those in B, A, and G. And so you just got to attach the code to the specific note on or specific letter on the makey, and then you've got your button, which is your trigger, and then there you go. So we started that, and I made it out of Play-Doh, went back and talked to the teacher of this one student I had in mind, and she's like, he hates Play-Doh. Hates it. Hates the texture. So we were like, okay, that's not going to be what we're going to use. Right. But she had the idea of mason jars lids.
Okay.
So again, if you think of whatever is conductive, what will conduct energy, like it can be anything. There's so many options. It could have been aluminum foil, right? So, and then she had the idea of there's all these cords and the wheelchair. And like, so she said, let's put like the makey and all the alligator cords in a little small bin.
Okay.
Let's make a little hole so that the cord that can go to the computer comes out, but it kind of minimized all the mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and let's use mason jars. So the mason jar lids were on top of this box. And then, there was an assistant who could hold, when you use the makey, you need to make the circuits, you need to have a full circuit, right? So you got to hold the earth. Yeah. And so she would hold on to that and then maybe touch his shoulder. And then he would, right. But then, and it took, even then, there was a learning curve of getting the student, the user used to what we were trying to have them do. And she had a brilliant idea of like, if there's a preferred sound that a student likes, start there. So I'm not sure we did it because we kind of got over the hump, but we were thinking about putting like a Mickey Mouse sound. Again, just like a preferred sound. So then so then the user would the child would want to use it more. So
that's neat. So the student would essentially just tap on the mason jar lids, and then each one was corresponded to a different note of the record.
Yes. And then the sound came out of just the laptop because we weren't really worried about like, it wasn't for a concert or anything. So it wasn't like we have to hear this sound super well.
Right.
But when his classmates were playing B, A, and G songs, he was too, and the kids were like, can we play his instrument?
Of course.
It was cool. Yeah, it was cool. And again, I asked, for the laptop, you could also do this with an iPad, but I asked for a laptop that could kind of hang out in my room, and I was lucky enough to get that. But so the setup was just you pull up that program on Scratch and just have that ready to go, plug in the makey, and you're good. Like it's not a lot of setup either.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like that was the first step when you were making this thing and giving it to a student to use. where did the project go from there?
Yeah. Well, again, I think I have to come back to my teammate, Abby, because she was also at the time kind of starting up a STEAM club, because she was also exploring like, what can we do with STEAM in the music classroom?
Yeah.
And so she started to kind of explore. She made a club because she thought, like, I don't really know where this is going to go, and I feel most comfortable trying it with a club. And I get that. So I kind of watched her and like the things that her kids were doing. And then somewhere along the line, I was like, I'm going to try that with some fifth graders. We were getting ready for the Winter Sing was coming up. They weren't in it, but much of the school is. And we had, I think it was a couple weeks before winter break. So I also felt like, okay, this is the time to try something, because, it's a couple weeks before break and people are this and that. And so, but yeah, I just started with like, or I guess I started to realize the power of that adaptive instrument for a student in our school. And I started to see how the kids loved it, and also the new respect, or what the word is, like, like they love it when they see their classmates being taken care of, right? Like I guess I realized the impact of, it was really cool to reach that one student. It was also really cool that everybody else had so much respect that, like, look, he's doing it, with us or whatever. And so, and then it helped me realize, like, I truly enjoyed creating that project. What if, we had kids create projects for people within our community? And like, I don't then have, because, if you think about it, we've actually never used that instrument again, because everybody has different needs, right? So they may not like the feel of a mason jar. We might have to go back to Play-Doh, or who knows, right? Like, but everybody's different. And also, we didn't want to give a child who comes the next year who maybe they have a little bit of breath support. So we don't want to take away that experience of the authentic instrument, right? So like, it made me realize there are so many different ways to do this. And we have quite a few needs. Even if you think about, we're doing an ukulele unit, and now a kid has broken their arm and they can't use that, like, what other options am I going to have them do to still be involved in chord progression and all that kind of stuff, but not just sit there and do the same thing, or to just, right? Like, they just wanted different options. So I just started I asked the kids one day, like, okay, what if we made some instruments with the purpose of creating it for some people in our community? And so I just listed a whole lot of things that I need. Here's a Winter Sing coming up. We need like a talker, or a speaker for a student to say a line. We need different instruments for different, because I have a lot of students who are nonverbal. So if they're going to be in the Winter Sing and we want them to be in the Winter Sing, singing isn't going to be an option, but we're not going to have you just stand there, So like, we need a jingle bell, or we need this. And sometimes the holding of the jingle bell is an issue. So how could we do kind of like a button kind of thing? So there were just a whole lot of needs. And then I just asked the kids, I had a couple fifth grade classes. Can you pick these are our needs. Can you come up with something for us? And we also brainstormed together, like, can you guys think of anything that's coming up? Oh yeah, ukuleles, that's going to be a thing. Yeah, let's come up with some other things. So, so I just kind of opened it up to them, and they loved that. So I did have like a template of like, to kind of walk them through the process. So like, who's in your group, what is your need that you're going to work on, and then create a prototype. Like, what is that going to look like? And then help them and ask them to come up with like, what do you think you need? And I had collected like cereal boxes, anything I could think of, right? Pipe cleaners, all the stuff. And I know, like, I think I even did like an email a week before of like, hey, teachers, if you have these things at your house, do you mind bringing them in and dropping them off? But that also, when they wrote down through that process of like, what are they going to do? What is what instrument are they trying to make, and getting them to like reiterate, what does your instrument have to be able to do?
Yes.
Because there was a lot of like, creating the same problem, like they had, oh yeah, wait, we said the person can't pick up things, and we made an instrument that you have to pick up, so they had to really think through what their purpose was in making the adaptive instrument. What materials do you need? And then that gave me some time to like supply something that they needed. But I also shared with them ahead of time too, when you're brainstorming, here's what I have so far, and they were pretty good at using within what we had, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone loved using Play-Doh,
of course.
but yeah. All right. And then the other thing too is some kids used no tech in it, which was totally fine, and some kids I provided, I knew a little bit of Scratch, so I provided some Scratch with them. We had done some lessons before that were like, put together a makey and explore what conducts energy, what doesn't, what, using the recordings, in the library already of Scratch to make like a simple composition project. So they had messed around with the music, there's one that you put with a piano and then they made buttons and then you got to put it in order, or make a simple mi re do song or something like that. So they'd played around with some of that stuff. So that wasn't totally new to them, but some kids chose to just make an adaptive instrument without any tech, which was fine too.
Absolutely.
But then there were other kids who were like, I want to use code.org. And I was like, okay, help me understand where you're going with this. But like, why would that matter too?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, so they had written out, what their purpose was for what the instrument they were going to make, drew out a prototype, told me what kind of things they want, what they think they might use for, to create it. Yeah. And then, I worried about, okay, I don't have a ton of makeys. Like if they are coding, how are we going to make all these things work? And I really only had like maybe 5. But we didn't need, everybody was at their own stage. So like when you were ready, we quick hooked up the stuff, tried it out. Okay, it works, and then I would try to grab a video. But everybody was kind of at enough of a different stages that like we could have the makeys going around the room, but when they were done, like somebody else could have it, and then because they're going to tweak it or they're going to add this or realize like, oh wait, I didn't solve my problem, I got to go back to the drawing board.
I love how you had that process and you really scaffolded it, so it wasn't just like go make something, but and the fact that you identified that problem first. I think that's a huge thing. Even if you think about like project-based learning, the idea that you're starting with that question of like, how can I make something to help a student participate in music class? And I think that it's a good way to frame it. And then and they were thinking about helping someone. They had that empathy piece.
Right? Oh my gosh. They were thrilled. And there was, I think, one class we like, the first time you do things, there's, been a million different ways you're going to do it. But like, the impact of letting them see the users use it, right? Yes. Like that was really cool. And like, again, we got really close to Winter Sing, and then it was like, I can't throw this to the user really fast either. So there was a whole bunch of lessons that I learned that I would use again. And we were just starting to kind of get back into our normal years. So I'm kind of ready to get back into these things. But that was cool. They did. So the classes that didn't get to try it with, some students would be just, we tried among each other. Okay. So we kind of did a gallery and we'd walk through, and when people would ask questions, or they would just see, oh, I thought it was really obvious that the user, like, you touch this button, you do. And then when they realized they had to tell somebody,
that's awesome.
Then they were like, oh, I'm now going to go write, label the buttons, like in their mind, they were like, well, that's the Jingle Bell button. How do you not know that? But how would somebody know that?
So, that's a really good point though. So you got to, you kind of tested it on yourselves first before giving it to the final user. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the students that did have a chance to use the instruments who needed them, what was that like?
Yeah. I think that was a good thing for kids to see, but it's not as romantic, because when the real thing happens, you realize oh, that person's not having a good day, or they don't get it, or they don't like to touch that, so it was, I think we also, was another thing I realized, we really needed to, maybe another piece would be I don't know if the words interview the user, but find out more about our specific users, because, then we could have prepared like a Mickey Mouse sound to make it a really good you know what I mean?
Yes.
So there were so many things I learned of like that we could have like started it off better. But it was just a cool moment to see kids together and being like, we made this, and you know, what do you think? And so
that's awesome. So how would you say that the creation of these adaptive instruments empowered your students, both the students who were creating and then those who were the end users?
So the kids that were creating, I mean, they were so invested in it. Like, it just, as soon as we started to talk about it and then the light bulbs are going off, like, they never wanted to stop the projects. I just had to be like, we're going to go on break. We have to stop. But they loved it. And there were actually some kids who were like, I really want to take my ukulele home. Like, one kid made a shape of an ukulele, but it was just like aluminum foil buttons for the different chords. And he strummed in the chords and recorded them in and stuff. But just like, he wanted it. You know? And it's like, I really, this is so cool. I want to bring it home, you know? And I think at the end, I did let them decide, like, do you want to take your project home? Do you want to keep it? And then I kept them like in the back of my room for a while. And I did have kind of like a whole bunch of stuff in my room, but I wanted them to know, like, here they are. And you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I loved them because they were like half of a cereal box thing, and they just looked really cool. But the kids, the purpose was so strong. The connection to their community, loving that somebody else was going to get to use it, and that was the motivation then to, like, you know, go through that launch process, right? Like, they just they did the creative thinking process and they got to do the highlights at the end. Like, I saw a user use this and it's not what I thought, and now I got to go back. But they were happy to go back and fix it. It wasn't like, ooh, I have a wrong, you know, answer, I'm a failure and horrible. Like, no, it was like, oh my God, okay, I can fix this, you know? And so the whole learning process was really exciting and engaging. The environment in the room was just like, I love it when there's just that buzz and kids are, so it was cool. And then again, also, there's just, again, this, when everybody in the room is taken care of, that's such a wonderful thing you could do for your community, because it's such a powerful thing that, like, we're not going to leave anybody behind, and we care about each other and we take care of each other, period. And so it was, you know, it's awesome that the students that need an adaptive recorder are doing things in our room, you know? And again, we did try to talk too about, like, I think of like, when you create an instrument, can you think as closest to the experience that you experience on the instrument as possible? So we're not denying somebody, you know, a part of the experience. If they can strum, and let's let them strum, but maybe we need something that pushes down the buttons, right? Or so it was really cool.
That's awesome. All right. So if someone was listening and they're inspired, they wanted to get started with something like this, what would you suggest for them?
I think a powerful thing was just writing down the needs in my building, like in my experience. What kids do I have coming in that need something? Or even like, what happens if we're in the middle of playing ukuleles and somebody's broken their arm? Because that has happened.
Oh,
and I've thought through, like, okay, one day they're on the GarageBand iPad doing like the different chords with their fingertips, but like, that goes for a day. And then what else? Okay, they're on the counter or the bass bars of, you know, and they're playing the bass bar of it, but that goes for a day. And so, like, you know, is there something else I can use when they have a broken arm, just to make it more interesting? But they're still using the content. They're still doing the content. So brainstorming your needs. And then, like, finding, if trying a makey or trying coding, it sounds super scary, like, find a friend. And have someone hold your hand and be like, come on over, we'll, you know, and just try something. Or ask your students. I think the other thing too is just brainstorming with your students, like, what are things that we need in our community? They'll come up with things and come up with ways to get there.
So, and I think you're talking a lot about creating adaptive instruments for potentially like physical needs, but I think you could even just go beyond that, when you're looking at your school building, what else do we need?
Absolutely.
How can we make sure that we're really serving everyone who's here? That's an important piece. So, is there anything that we didn't talk about as far as the adaptive instruments in this project goes?
Nothing I can think of.
Okay. So then my next question, and this is, I think those of you who listen to the podcast on a regular basis know that we have a question we often ask at the conclusion of each one. We're going to kind of tweak it for the second half of this season. So the question is, how do you build community in the music room?
Yeah. And I think for me is something that I kind of have said already is that when kids feel cared for, even if it's not, that belonging, but even if it's they see that their friend was cared for, whether it's a broken arm or it's, the challenge that somebody has, that everyone's going to participate in everything that we do. And we're going to make, an adaptive instrument or something to make sure that everybody's participating. And that just goes such a long way. And I think it helps kids see I'm caring for them, but it also kind of sees it also has that we have each other's back. We're going to take care of each other.
Yeah. And you're modeling that.
Yeah.
Right. So they see you do it, and hopefully that's going to help them have those same reactions and those same things.
And it's like just exercising that muscle, because it is hard. Like every situation, you're like, what am I going to do for this situation? But asking the question, you just kind of get better at it, and you open it up for somebody else to say something that you didn't think about.
Absolutely.
Oh, let's do that, right? It becomes our challenge that we're going to all figure out together. So
yeah, that's great. Okay, so if people want to learn more about these kinds of things, now they probably know how to connect with you, but still, let's throw all that out. How can they connect, learn more about your work, and all of that?
Well, so Full Steam Ahead is a book that I was mentioning before, and that's a book that I did with Abby Blair. And that has this adaptive recorder in there and the Empathy Project. So if you're looking for a more detailed thing, that's there.
Perfect.
We'll also probably put in the links. There's a Blair Finch Project YouTube channel that has videos of things to look at, especially that adaptive recorder.
Perfect.
And we can link the Blair Finch Project website, which has just some more ideas and things. At Singing Finch 1 is my Twitter handle and Insta. And and then there Pass the Baton stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Kathryn, this was so fun. I'm glad we got to not only do it in person.
I know, I'm glad you're here.
I know. Although I'm really hoping my flight gets me home tonight. I've enjoyed this very much, but it is time. It's time to go home. It's also cold. I don't know.
You've gotten your fill of snow and cold.
Yeah, I think I'm good for the season.
I was going to let you shovel earlier if you wanted to, but I was like, it's too cold for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Kathryn, thanks for sharing about your project.
Yeah.
We'll see everyone next time.
Sounds good.
All right, bye.
Thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
We'd also love for you to consider sharing this podcast with a friend and leaving a positive review. That's one of the best ways to get this message to new listeners.